Well, Marci, I really appreciate you being here with me on the Social Entrepreneurship and Innovation podcast, and specifically here for our series on the impact of fashion. For folks who are unfamiliar with you and the work that you do, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure. So, hey everyone, I am Marci Zaroff, and today I'm the founder and CEO of ECOFashion Corp, which is a greenhouse of brands made up of MetaWare, which is a turnkey manufacturing platform, all sustainable, of apparel and home. We have two brands on QVC, so farm to home and seed to style. And then we have our own direct to consumer brand called Yes and, which really sums up my life work, which is joining this lifestyle, which I call the eco renaissance, is not about sacrifice or deprivation. It's about value add. It's about getting more. And I've spent the past 30 years driving a sustainable lifestyle. My book, again, Eco Renaissance, connects the dots from food to beauty, art, fashion, business, all the spokes in the wheel of popular culture. So just building on my current work, I've spent a lot of years in the trenches. I co-founded a school in 1990 that's known today as the Institute for Integrative Nutrition and is the world's largest holistic nutrition school. I then opened the first Aveda concept salon with the founder of Aveda, and connecting food to beauty. And then I coined and trademarked the term eco-fashion in 1995 when people thought I was absolutely insane, that no one would ever buy into that concept, and started the first sustainable fashion and home brand in North America called Under the Canopy. So it's been a long and winding road, but I'm a serial entrepreneur and I love what I do, which kind of sums up my favorite quote: work is love made visible, by Khalil Gibran, the book The Prophet, because when you love your work, it's not work, it's love.
Mm. I'm with you on that as well, but so much in there that I hope we can get to. I'd love to start first off with what do you think brought you from the very beginning into this side of sustainability of things, especially at, as you described then, a time in which the concept of eco-fashion, for one, people perhaps looked at you like you were crazy. What had you start so early in that space and brought you to it from square one of your entrepreneurial career?
Yeah, well, just kind of stepping back, a lot of companies, brands, designers are coming into sustainability now, and already their foundation is in non-sustainable fashion, right? And they're trying to make fashion sustainable. My whole thing has always been to make sustainability fashionable, right? So to package eating healthy or using beauty products that are, that work and that also are non-toxic. And then fashion always having to lead with design, style and quality and fit and color and comfort. But having started in food, I already sort of had been in the not sort of, I'd been in the trenches trying to recognize how do we meet today's consumer where they are? And I was that consumer, right? So for me, I mean, when I was a teenager, I stumbled upon a book called Living in the Light by Shakti Gawain, and it just sort of like, struck a chord in me that there's more than what we see. I then met the founder of Aveda, who became my mentor of 25 years, and I would read his bottles the products, the labels and the origins and ancient healing traditions and indigenous wisdom and plant-based healing. And I was like, whoa, because if you smell the Aveda products, you're like, wow, and then sort of through the course of, understanding food, I started to read and become a vegetarian. And then I started the school to take people on this journey. I think what I really learned and just, this whole path that I've been on is it's not about, again, sacrifice or deprivation. It's not about compromise. It's about value add. And so as a business person, you hear focus on profits, right? I mean, I did go to business school. I have a degree in finance and marketing from Haas Business School in California. And to me, I've always seen business as a force for change, right? A very powerful force for change, but built on a different set of principles, which really has come to life through B Corp now, right? People, planet, profit, passion, and purpose. So I've looked at every single chapter in my own book of life and my own career path. And I've been, evolving and growing because I believe once you plant the seed of consciousness and you cultivate it, it inevitably grows. And I think that business today is not what it used to be. Businesses are being
Mm,
held accountable to social and environmental principles and strategies. And I believe it's not about staying ahead anymore. It's about not being left behind. But I had this calling at a very young age that this was, not just people, planet, profit, but passion and purpose were really the driving force for me throughout my entire career.
mm. Wow, and so I'm curious, what has it been like for you to then watch some of these movements and communities emerge, like the Certified B Corporation community you mentioned there? I think that was in 2006 or so, roughly. So you've seen these things take shape really from their infancy and having kind of been in it from the very beginning. What's that like to watch that process unfold?
Well, for so many years, people would say, what is your mission or your, highest vision? And I would say to make the norm the alternative and the alternative the norm, right? And I pinch myself now, right? I have two millennial kids and I look at the culture that they're, living in, and it's a different world. The internet changed the game, right? You can pull the curtain back and you
Mm,
can say, what's in my food? Who made my clothes? What's in them? How are they being made? So, eco fashion used to have all these stigmas attached to it, that was crunchy, frumpy, boxy, beige, boring. Can you smoke it after you wear it? And then there was the overpriced and only the elite can wear it. And then there was well, how do you really know if it's sustainable? And all those stigmas kind of took us even below baseline, right? So there were a lot of years of me like just
mm,
pounding the pavement on doors, trying to convince people that something that was so intuitive to me, that like not fashion at the expense of our environment and human health and social justice, and like they don't have to be mutually exclusive, right? And so that was very intuitive for me, but there was a lot of resistance. People would say like people who are into fashion
mm,
are not the same people who are into humanitarianism and and consciousness environmentalism, and people who are into you know more progressive ideas and human and environmental wellness are not the same people into fashion. And I'm like, huh? But I'm that person. So what I've seen over the course of this last, and I would say even just in the last 10 years, is people are like
mm,
having that aha, that it's not this or that, it's this and that. It's value and values, right? As consumers,
mm,
as business leaders, right? As, citizens of the world, that we can vote with our dollars and we can be the change, eat the change, live the change, wear the change we wish to see. And so today, when I look at just how we're getting propelled forward at Eco Fashion Corp, it's testament to the fact that, it's game on now.
mm. Certainly, and it seems as if while those things have had some steady momentum, the movements or the presence of sustainability, it seems certainly that the crises that we've gone through recently, the pandemic, and then as well acutely where it seems much of the climate related issues are coming to a head, that might have ripped things open a little bit to accelerate the pace at which it's now, like you said, not a matter of keeping ahead, but not being left behind, certainly. And so, Marci, I'm wondering that you mentioned the term a couple times. You mentioned at the top the term you coined in 1995, eco fashion. How do you feel about that term now, as perhaps you defined it or thought about it then?
Yeah, so I think back then you know, the idea of eco fashion was to style the world of change and change the world of style, bridging the tree
Mm,
hugger and the fashionista, or the tribe and the boardroom, and to bring those worlds together where, you can have everything that you want. And oh, by the way, it's also ethically made and certified organic, recycled, biodegradable, fair trade, low impact. I mean, all of that yummy stuff, right? But lead with great design. And so, it where the world is today in terms of receptivity and, you know, the next generation of brands, eco fashion has come to a place where it's a ubiquitous term for this movement of a different kind of fashion industry. And I get very proud and excited about, something that was such this like ephemeral concepts, so long ago. If you would have Googled eco fashion when I started, I was the only listing, right? So like now I pinch myself and I want to meet major companies where they are. I want to help and mentor designers and the next generation of entrepreneurs and leaders. Because look, it's game on. You talked about climate change. The fashion industry contributes, you'll see different statistics out there, but anywhere from, 4% to 10% of the world's carbon footprint, depending if you include agriculture and transportation, which is a part of the fashion world, right? And to me, it's not about doing less harm. It's about, doing more good now. And I'm a soil junkie. I'm very passionate about agriculture. I always have been. That's why I started in food. I got into the trenches. I wanted to learn. I partnered with the Rodale Institute back in the early 90s. And today, regenerative agriculture is being seen as one of our greatest solutions to climate change. Because when we have healthy soil, which is the skin of the earth, will sequester carbon out of the atmosphere the way that our skin absorbs, right? And which is a second reason that eco-fashion is so important, because we're not just what we eat, we're also what we wear. Why? Because the skin is the largest organ in our bodies. It's our primary organ for absorption, right? So when you pull the curtain back and you unveil the magnitude and multitude of harmful chemicals that are going into our textile system, it's pretty eye-opening. And then you think about, whoa, we're wearing textiles 24/7 pretty much, because you're sleeping in sheets, you're using towels, robes, t-shirts, underwear, and then ultimately, what you're wearing all day. And it's an extension of who you are. And it's just pretty crazy. Business as usual can't continue when you look at what goes into the making, the growing, and the sewing, and the building of textiles.
Definitely. And I mean, I don't mean to get caught up on terms and definitions, but it seems in the space of sustainability, so many are thrown around, and it's something of a moving target. Just in the conversation of fashion, we've had others come up of just sustainable fashion generally, but circular fashion and regenerative fashion as to define something of what the expectations of the industry and our relationships to our clothing and clothing industry, how that should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious what's maybe something of your perspective or your opinion as to what, you've hinted at it in conversation already, but what's the ideal that we should aspire to, or what should our expectations be of the fashion industry, people and businesses in fashion?
Yeah, so I would say there's kind of two buckets for me, right? One is you've got a third of the textile industry that's made from cotton, right? 60% of a cotton plant goes back to the food stream. There's interconnection in agriculture. When you look at organic and regenerative practices, it's about building soil health through crop rotation, right? It's part of the methodology. So we have to build a better cotton system, because today, cotton is one of the most heavily sprayed industries in the world, one of the most toxic, right? Less than 3% of the world's agriculture, but almost 20% of the world's most harmful chemical insecticides and 10% of the most toxic pesticides, not to mention all the social ramifications of the farmers who get stuck on these pesticide treadmills. The whole system is broken, right? And then you have all the processing of cotton with harmful chemicals and formaldehyde and heavy metals and chlorine bleach. And so people think, oh, I'm wearing a natural fiber. But when you really pull the curtain back and you look at what goes into the production of cotton, not to mention how we've deteriorated our soil and destroyed it through conventional agriculture, right? Like through GMOs and all the chemical cocktails that go with them. So we have to create organic, regenerative agriculture for all of the cotton textiles out there. And there's a big opportunity to leverage the power of fashion to transform agriculture to help be a solution to climate change. It's like boom, boom, boom. So that's something I'm super passionate about. And I started a farm project in India called Reset that has biodynamic, organic, and regenerative cotton. And we're bringing that all the way up the supply chain in both MetaWear and the QVC brands, as well as in Yes And, so that it's all the way to the finished fashion product. And then the second bucket is the circular bucket. So every single synthetic garment in the history of mankind, right? We're talking about 60, 70 years worth of synthetic garments. So polyesters and acrylics and nylons, and they don't biodegrade. And every time you wash them, little microfibers come off of the textiles, which then go into our water systems, into our oceans, and they're literally destroying our ocean ecosystems. About a third of the plastic that's in the oceans today are microfibers from textiles, right? And they see you
Mm,
see numbers like 90% of fish are, showing traces of microfibers in them now. So it's a serious issue. So we have to stop producing virgin, plus we're, of course, you look at energy and water use and producing virgin synthetic textiles, and it's massive. So, fast fashion took us in a direction that was just, we could not keep going in that linear model. Circular model is saying what we take from the earth, we have to give back to the earth. And in a cradle to cradle principles, it's looking at material health and material reuse, as well as water stewardship, renewable energy, and social justice, right? So the one side is like GOTS and organic and regenerative, and the other side is circular, where let's use all those textiles that are ending up in the landfills, and let's figure out how to reuse, repair, rent, recycle, regenerate, but in a different way, so that we can
mm,
bring those synthetic garment needs back into the market, keep them out there and out of the oceans, the landfills, and our waste streams.
mm. And so what do you feel is the pace at which we're moving to a more sustainable or that specific circular model? Is it fast enough? Is it not moving fast enough? Where do you feel like we are?
Yeah, I mean, as long as I've been in this space, I what I love about it is I'm learning something new every day. It's moving that fast, right? Like
Mm,
I mean, it's all hands on deck now. So like, I'm part of an organization called the Textile Exchange, which is, most of the major brands, retailers are part of, and even factories are part of this organization. We've made an industry-wide commitment, a collaboration to reduce our carbon footprint in the textile industry by 45% by 2030. And there are some companies that are actually making even bigger commitments. They want to get to 100% sustainable cotton by 2025, or they want to be net carbon zero by 2030, and so everybody's kind of looking at their own business models right now. And there's so many, opportunities and disruptions that are underway. There's so much innovation that's being driven by collaboration. And I always say 1 + 1 = 11, because we're stronger together than we are apart. And historically, the fashion industry was highly competitive, and today it's highly cooperative, right? It's cooperation
mm,
now. And that's because everybody is kind of, this is the history of my career when I used to go to the natural products industry trade shows like Expo East and West. And it was all, we've got your back. And then I would go to the big fashion trade shows and it was like, watch your back. Like I'm kind of this schizophrenia of trying to bridge those worlds. But today, we're all holding hands and realizing that, our most pressing issue of climate change, we need everybody to be at the table, right? We have to meet consumers where they are. We have to meet major brands and retailers where they are. We have to hold hands, and we have to figure out how to, as Albert Einstein said, we can't solve today's problems with the same consciousness that created them. We have to change our consciousness, and we have to build new systems.
mm. And what do you think is the greatest change that needs to take place, and perhaps where do we need to focus that effort?
Yeah, so there's really this movement, and how it's getting propelled is somewhat of a convergence of, there is some government accountability that's starting to, build, coalitions and opportunities for change. So, we got to keep pushing, but policy is a slow moving train, right? We also have to
Mm,
educate consumers, because I think, to some extent, on some levels, they're actually more educated than the brands and retailers, but in other ways, they don't know where to find things. They don't know what to look for still, but they know they want it. So there's a lot of pent up
mm,
demand for that, sustainable fashion, for sustainable products, for regenerative products. So that, again, this is, you know, the Native Americans said, right? We don't inherit this land from our ancestors. We borrow it from our children. And I think the younger generations are realizing, like, this is my future. This is my children's future. And so, they're looking for ways to be a part of that solution, easy ways. I always look at our brands as fashion activism, right? Like, I don't have to bring someone down the rabbit hole and teach them all about organic and regenerative agriculture unless they want to go there. At the end of the day, it's a great dress. It's a great jacket. It's a great, you're a part of the change and you don't have to be inconvenienced. So it's like there's something for everyone, wherever you are on the spectrum, that's okay, right? It's like planting a garden. There's lots of seeds and they're all budding at different times, but they're all part of the harvest together, right? So if we want humanity to thrive, we all have to play our part.
I definitely agree. And is there something that you've seen is particularly different in the space of consumers? I mean, you mentioned, for one, the built up demand, and as well, perhaps items that are relevant demographically speaking, the younger generations, and what their concerns might be. Are there other trends or items that you feel like you've noticed have changed, acutely now versus 10 years ago or so, with what the consumer demographics look like for people who are asking and calling for, more of these sustainable products in the fashion space?
So again, starting with food, I would just say this: when I started my career, or even just this path, over 30 years ago, I would say that everybody in the global organic industry knew each other. Like, that's how small the industry was, right? And we still, I think I just went to my 32nd Expo East this weekend. But when the industry started, there was, again, a lot of resistance around even the word organic, like we're some kind of freak show, new agey people, because we believe that, our soil and agricultural systems and the food we eat, as the Rodales say, right? Healthy soil makes healthy plants, makes healthy people, right? Like, we just fundamentally believe that, but it was a big uphill battle. Today, it's a $62 billion industry in the US alone, the organic industry. It's been growing at almost double-digit rates for 20 consecutive years. You have a hotspot study that was done a few years ago that showed that where there are pockets of organic agriculture and business, household incomes are going up over $2,000, poverty rates are decreasing, and communities are thriving. You have the only uptick in agriculture right now in farming is organic, young farmers wanting to come in and change the system. And organic farmers on average make 35% more money. So they're more sustainable models, whereas the old farmers are struggling to survive. There's so many good business reasons why organic makes sense, yet it was always perceived as this very kind of, it's a bipartisan thing, but it was always perceived as like, oh, eco people, health people, right? So what I've seen today is organic has crossed over big time into the mainstream, right? Where you have, the biggest buyer in America is Costco. It's not Whole Foods, right? Of organic food. And it's accessible now. And because of that, it's out there where 84% of Americans are buying organic food at least occasionally. And 52% of them are millennials, right? And the millennials are still having children, but the number one reason historically people have embraced an organic lifestyle is when they had kids. And so the trajectory for this lifestyle is going to continue to grow. And I look at organic fashion and what I've been doing, and, creating gorgeous garments and sweaters and knits and wovens out of organic fibers and materials. I look at that as an extension of lifestyle, right? You can't really support one part of the equation without the rest, because it's all connected. And we're not outside of nature, we're part of nature, right? We breathe out carbon and nature breathes in carbon, and nature breathes out oxygen and we breathe in oxygen. So we have this relationship that we've lost sight of, and our clothing doesn't grow in the department store and our food doesn't grow in the supermarket. We have to so I think what's happening now is there was this huge miss for decades, or around the obvious stuff that people are younger generations now would be like, what? You used to think what? But we're finally at a place where we've, the tipping point and the future. I believe, I'm very optimistic, and, I see where we're going, and that whole mission of the alternative becoming the norm and the norm becoming the alternative. I think we're there. Or we're getting there.
And we're on our way.
We're on our way. We're on our way.
And so you mentioned a few different times the concept of voting with your dollar, and consumers now having the option to make a more conscious and considerate decision, especially as it relates to fashion. I'm wondering, do you have any advice or prescriptions as to what folks might look for when they're out in the world? Are there particular brands or likewise, is it a measurement of certification or what have you? What should we look out for?
Yeah. So first, I'm going to just give a little plug. Why? Because whatever answer I'm going to give you is barely going to be a grain of sand compared to why I wrote this book, was to pack it with those answers, to make it a user-friendly lifestyle guidebook that's evergreen, that takes you on the journey across all these categories, and then ultimately, gives you brands and resources and websites and podcasts and so in every chapter, and as well as interviews with people that I call my Illuminartists, who are the modern day Michelangelos of the eco renaissance and paving the way. But in answer to that, I mean, the most basic answer that I would say is read labels. In food, if you can't pronounce it, don't eat it, right? In textiles, if you see, lots of long words, that's a little scary, right? Like, because there's a lot of synthetic chemicals in textiles. And I would just look for brands that have certification to either organic, which would be the GOTS standard, the Global Organic Textile Standard, which I was on the team of people that wrote that standard in the 90s and have been a very big advocate of, full traceability and transparency, which is what GOTS gives you from farm all the way to finished product, every single touch point of the product, including the dyes, the finishes, the packaging. Everything is part of a GOTS certified product, right? So is it a perfect system? No, but to me, it is the ultimate. It is the platinum standard. Cradle to cradle, fair trade, other great certifications. But at the end of the day, if you see a label and it says organic cotton, and then in the same, you see rayon, that's probably a red flag. And I would be a little concerned about the organic, right? But, get to know the brand. I mean, we have the internet, right? Get to know the brands and the companies that you're supporting, what their missions are, what their, again, it's transparency. It's not about being perfect. It's about being transparent and saying, this is where we're going. We're not there yet, but we're committed. And here are the steps we're going to take to get there. Right. And I think that's where you build trust and credibility. And I think blockchain technology is the next frontier of our movement. And starting next month at Yes And, so definitely follow at Yes and join yesand.com is our URL. We're launching a QR code platform where our products will arrive with a QR code in the label that you can scan and have a full visibility as to where the farms are and the factories and every touch point and the farmer stories. And we'll continue building on that blockchain QR code technology where we'll the next chapter is to bring impact data and carbon mapping up the supply chain as well. So really excited as technology now is starting to be more further infused into the fashion industry, which will further accelerate it as well. And that's another kind of, big, exciting chapter ahead.
Certainly, it really seems like that's something that might set the standard or what the standard could be. Because exactly that last point, what you mentioned of what to look out for, a huge portion of what I recommend is usually to go straight to the source, to look at the website of the company, the brand. Do you know who's behind it? How extensively have they documented the supply chain, the work, and their progression towards making their products more sustainable? You start to tell the difference when you do that digging of who's really kind of out front and, with it, of saying we're working on this, even if they aren't, perfect or exactly there just yet. But you notice the difference by doing that digging, and then that will take it absolutely to the next level to where you can just scan that if you're in a shop looking at a particular garment. So that's rather incredible. And since you brought up your book, Marci, and you stated explicitly the reason for readers as to perhaps why you created it, I'm wondering for you personally, especially given the extensive experience that you've had, why was it, and I think it's 3 years ago that you published the book, roughly. Why then did you decide to assemble this book, publish this book, Eco Renaissance?
So, throughout the course of my career from IIN, I mean, I've been an educator. And I know that, going back to your question earlier, education is a huge catalyst for change, right? Because, people go through life sometimes just not knowing, and whether, a lot of the missteps that even happen in the fashion industry right now, it's knowing and it's unknowing. It's people wanting to do, some people really, the intention is there, but they just don't know what they're doing. And so I think by meeting people where they are and taking them in a very easy, fun way into this world. I mean, historically, this movement of, I'm calling it the eco renaissance, right? The rebirth of humanity built on this awakening and realization that we're all a part of a collective ecosystem was this kind of daunting concept before, but the way I present it is through the lens of fashion, which is the work I do, right? Which is, this is cool, this is fun, this is fashionable to do this, right? And here's how easy it is. It's not so hard. It's actually, you're going to learn all these new things and about all these new places and brands and ideas and engage people and have, and again, my Illuminartists are, they're all doing amazing work. I want, people who come to this book to have a resource. And the tagline is co-creating a stylish, sexy, and sustainable world, right? Because this is about co-creation. We are all creators. And we all can together design whatever reality we wish to see, because we design the reality we're living. We're living in a modern day Star Wars right now with the dark and the light forces at odds, right? But like, it's time to turn the light on, right? And shine our light. And that comes from source. And it's very metaphoric that the food, beauty, the fashion, it starts at the source. And our whole business model at EcoFashion Corp and MetaWear and Yes and Farm to Home and Seed to Style is source to story, right? With that full traceability, it's connecting the dots from agriculture to popular culture. So when I wrote the book, it was, I don't care where I might activate you or plant the seed. It might be in the food chapter, it might be in the beauty chapter, might be in the business chapter, it might be in the art chapter or fashion. Doesn't matter, because I believe once you plant the seed of consciousness, it inevitably grows, right? And you eventually you will wander into sort of another layer. It's just when you're ready. And today, when you asked me, kind of when I wrote it 3 years ago with Simon and Schuster was my publisher, I was still, again, like, expanding my educational platform, right? As an educator, I've been doing public speaking for almost 20 years, but you can only reach so many people in a room, right? So then the book was the next thing, and now it's digital media and platforms on broadcast, and and really moving more in that direction now too. And today, because I do believe the gift that COVID gave us, and I don't in any way, shape, or form, make light of the suffering and the pain and that we've endured as humanity in this global community in this last year and a half. But the gift it's given us is it's forced everyone to reset their priorities and go back to who we really are, go back to source, go inside because we couldn't go outside, and tap back into where the light lives and say, you know what really matters? Health, wellness, family, protecting my children and their futures, my community, doing well by doing good in the world, being a part of the solution, not the problem. And I think that has been an incredible catalyst. So my book is having a second life now, which is super cool because it's now probably more relevant than it's ever been.
That's excellent. And you mentioned right there a list of items that people might consider important. Maybe those are some you do as well. But I'm curious, that was quite the list. There's clearly quite the list of things that you have been involved in and that you are currently involved in as an entrepreneur. How are we managing all this? How do you think about prioritization? And how are you keeping track of your time?
Yeah. I'm the kid that had the lemonade stand. I've been wired as an entrepreneur my whole life. So there's something about the way I'm wired that the more I have to do, the more productive I am in everything, right? Like, I have a system. I mean, there's kind of what doesn't kill you makes you smarter and stronger. And so you become over time kind of way more efficient in the work that you do. And I know where my time is best spent by just virtue of a life of, learning, right? So I channel my efforts into those things where I know I can be a catalyst or accelerate and be a change maker. And I delegate where I can direct and guide and mentor, but I don't have to be sort of, with my sleeves rolled up doing the, the tactical stuff, right? So I've kind of learned how to build and build teams and build families, because that's what, every company that I build, culture is super important, that we're a family, we're not just a team, and that we lean on each
Mm,
other, and because serving each other is serving ourselves, right? Like, and that's how we should see life, right? Like, we're all in this together, and, you know, the future is ours to co-create, to redesign. And we have an incredible opportunity to do that now with lots of innovation and fresh, ideas. And I think that's another thing the pandemic has done, is it's sort of people just, their creative energy has really started flowing again, because they were able to stop and reflect. We all
mm,
move way the hell too fast, right? We need to slow down our own lives. We need to slow down fashion. We need to slow down food, and we need to get back to the roots. And we need to, feed those roots, with healthy soil and, healthy ingredients and inputs, so that we can build strong immune systems and strong, plant-based systems as well, and protect, human and environmental wellness and farmer and worker welfare and future generations.
mm. I love that. And Marci, thank you so much for taking the time here. Before we wrap up, do you mind if I hit you with a couple rapid fire questions?
Go for it.
All right. So first one, what's perhaps a resource, a book, film, or whatever that you might recommend to someone who's listening here who wants to dive deeper into any of these topics mentioned,
Hmm.
regenerative agriculture or fashion specifically? What's something that you'd love to recommend to our listeners?
Yeah, so I just posted yesterday a book called Rise and Resist, on my
Mm,
on my Instagram at Marci Zaroff. Um, fashionrevolution.org is a great resource to learn more. Um, I would say Kiss the Ground is a great book to read around regenerative agriculture. Um, this is the 50th anniversary of Be Here Now by Ram Dass. So I would just say,
mm,
as a Bible of tapping into who we really are and what really matters, and the idea of, you know, every moment is an opportunity to create a different future and to be present, right? I think that's a really important book. And then finally, my friend Danny Washington just came out with a book called Bold Women in Science, that is very powerful, but really talks about all these different women driving positive change in ecosystems.
mm,
Where science meets spirituality, meets business, meets art, meets wellness, like all of these, you know. I think what's happening with gender, also, where we're going with gender equality and, women's empowerment. And I think right now, there's so many amazing resources out there and so many amazing people. And yeah, and anyone can reach me at Marci Zaroff too.
excellent. A great list of recommendations. A next one for you. What's a daily routine or a morning habit that you feel like you have to stick to?
Yeah. By the way, I'd be remiss to not mention Cradle to Cradle too, because the book Cradle to Cradle
Go on.
is a Bible of this whole circular economy. Um, so,
Perfect.
my daily ritual is, I am kind of a spa junkie in addition to being a soil junkie. So I steam, I meditate, yoga, um, I take walks. I start my day, generally speaking, with a steam, a jacuzzi, a green juice. I kind of get myself grounded, and
Mm,
then I hit the ground running, and I go like full steam ahead.
mm. How long does that routine take you?
Um, it depends on the day and it depends on the season, because I'm allergic to winter. So, I'm not as good as I am in the summer and spring. Um, so I got my seatbelt on. I'm braced. But I did get a Peloton.
Yeah. Okay.
So I give myself a good probably 90 minutes in the morning. When I first open my eyes, I'm usually waiting for my husband to wake up. So I typically start off with some social media and catching up on email for, until he opens his eyes, and then we go together. And it's part of our morning
Mm,
ritual together. So I would say a good at least an hour to an hour and a half every morning. We get up early and we'll start our day there.
Lovely. And one last question for you, Marci. Our listeners are change makers, innovators from all sectors all over the world. What's one last piece of advice that you might leave them with? It's been layered throughout our conversation, without a doubt, but wanted to ask you this one directly.
I would probably say, don't get stuck in the muck. That, if you set a big picture vision, recognize that being an entrepreneur means you have to be a professional pivoter, right? Like, see every challenge as an opportunity to get smarter, stronger, and better. Don't see challenges as obstacles that are going to stop you. See them as incredible, right? It's like Buddhist philosophy, we can't know joy without pain. Like, see those moments, be with those moments, reflect on what you need to do, and pivot. And if you continue to do that, then again, it's about, the journey. It's enjoy the journey, and, seatbelt on and have fun on the ride, because it's never a straight line. There's always a lot of twists and turns and ups and downs. And to this day, 30 years in business, and I know that. And when I hit a perceived wall, I'm excited. Like, okay, don't try to force a square peg in a round hole. Change direction.
Great advice for us to end on. Marci, last item. I know you're involved with quite a bit, but where would you like to direct folks specifically to keep up with you and what you're up to?
So on social media, on pretty much every platform, it's at Marci Zaroff. So Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. I'm not quite the TikToker yet. But then marcizaroff.com and ecofashioncorp.com is where you can also then be sent to all our other brands. Yes, and Seed to Style and Farm to Home.
Perfect. We'll have all those links in our show post at growensemble.com. Thank you so much, Marci.
Thank you so much, Cory. Great to co-create.